Hi, my name is Dustin Feider, and I beat the often path by making absolutely ridiculous creations suspended from the tree.
Welcome back to the Beat the Oven Path podcast. I'm your host, Ross Palmer. On this show, we showcase unusual success stories, people who have gone way outside the box in their lives and their careers and found fulfillment. As I've said before on the show, we're very careful not to define success as in made a ton of money. We're looking for something deeper than that, something more than that, something cooler than that. Well, let me tell you about Dustin Feider, today's guest. Dustin Feider is one of those rare individuals that when you see his work, you'll just be blown away visually. He's a professional artist who took a highly unusual earth-forward twist with his own career. He put years of design experience into the work of creating out-of-this-world custom tree houses. These aren't your average tree houses, though. They look like a cross between Apple's vision of the future and Avatar. These things are freaking incredible. Not only that, he's actually joining me on the call today from one of his incredible creations. So, he's built a company called O2 Treehouses, and he's made an outstanding career from his unlikely passion. So I can't wait for you guys to hear this one. Here's Dustin Feider, eco-designer extraordinaire. I can confirm for those who are listening only that you do make absolutely ridiculous creations, both suspended from a tree and otherwise. So can you tell us how you got started? Have you always been a designer? How did you get started in building very strange physical objects?
Yeah, so, I think like many kids, I was out there in the woods and romping around and, having a great time, just, getting dirty and, just got into building forts and that kind of thing. I was lucky. There was in the subdivision that I grew up in, there was one right next to it that was being developed, and it was just a smorgasbord of like, the scrap piles of materials and things like that from all these, new homes being created. And, so yeah, we, we had a forest in my backyard, and we just started throwing boards together and taking it like literally on like a Red Ryder little trailer thing on the bike and pulling materials to my backwoods. And yeah, so it's funny, like in a way I've always been interested in this, strangely. I mean, like I said, like many kids grew up like building forts and that kind of thing. My dad built a tree house for my sister and I when I was much younger than those building days, that we absolutely loved. And it was actually a bit of a risky venture to get up into that tree house. Kind of had to do a couple bear hug moves and like, balance on this dead branch, that eventually fell off, pull ourselves up. And, my dad was, my dad's side of the family, actually, they're all climbers. A lot of them were climbers. And so, from a pretty early age, we would go out with my dad. I grew up in Wisconsin in a spot called Devil's Lake, and we would go rock climbing there. So yeah, I guess, trees, forests, climbing, that kind of thing was really just part of like the activities growing up.
Just part of your life. It's funny you mentioned that because I had basically the same thing. The subdivision, I grew up in a suburb of Denver, and the subdivision I was in, there was a giant empty field and then a path and then another empty field. And one of the empty fields had a cluster of trees, not a forest, but a cluster. And they started construction. Now it's all built up. It's all homes. So no kid is going to be able to do what you and I did, which is another tragic thing we can talk about. But we did the same thing. There was a construction site, and we would steal pieces of plywood and various things. And we would build, not necessarily some part of tree houses, but we built a lot of underground forts. Like we dug tunnels and put plywood and then put secret entrances where we put sand over the plywood.
Wow,
so
really?
So you could be looking over a field and you would see nothing, but only we knew that there was a cave of tunnels there. And
my God, that's so like the Great Escape of you too.
And being the idiots that we were, and most of it was pretty harmless. We had juice and we had candy and items in there. Most of it was pretty harmless. But then, like the true adventurers that we were, we decided we should also have a fireplace in this. So we jury-rigged a kind of fireplace underground, which is so unsafe. And somebody came by and they saw smoke billowing from apparently the field. It was actually one of our everything about this is horrible. And they called the fire department. The fire department came. They uncovered our whole scheme. And that is, for anybody listening, how you as a kid end up in fire safety training in a multi-week program where you learn how stupid every part of that is. But we were stupid. We didn't know. So that's my little story.
You like
childhood.
Literally smoked yourself out of your own fort.
Yes. But to our credit, nothing actually went wrong except for the fact that somebody else freaked out. So we didn't burn anything down, thankfully. We didn't hurt ourselves aside from taking years off of our life and smoke inhalation, I'm sure. But anyways,
oh my God.
I say that just because now that you said it brings to mind that, how many people are going to have that childhood? How many people are even going to know what a treehouse is in the future? That's another aspect altogether. But you grew up in an outdoorsy way. You're building these things. And just before we jump into it, you're in a treehouse. You're in one of your creations right now. Can we get a 360 view of this thing for the video watchers?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad my cell phone will make it easy for the tour.
Is that a couch?
Yeah. It is. It's a couch.
Amazing.
It's a futon,
a table,
actually,
a futon, of course. Got to double purpose it.
Yep. So there's the, so this is the glamping treehouse.
It's beautiful.
Well, thank you.
And from the outside, and we'll show these pictures up on the video as well, but the outside, I'm sure. I've seen all the photos of your website. They're truly spectacular. They're not just your average treehouse. They're insane.
Yeah, I mean, I typically need to qualify that, if I tell somebody that, we build treehouses, it's like, it's probably not what you're thinking. It's more of like a sculptural thing that you can like go inside of that hangs in a tree.
Right. Imagine those modern, chic, artistic, like every creation you've built, both in terms of tree houses and in terms of your other art, looks like it belongs on a magazine cover or in an Apple TV original, quaint spaces or home or whatever it's called. It's stunning. Yeah. All of it.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, I think I'm not the only one who thinks that. You've received a lot of accolades. They're insane. And I think you've probably unlocked, which is so cool about your story, you've unlocked a dream in a lot of people because I've seen you've gotten a lot of press coverage. You've probably unlocked a dream, just like how I hadn't thought of that story of my childhood until you said that. I think you probably unlock a lot of hidden memories or wishful thinking from a lot of people who see your work. It kind of harkens back to a mythical, ideal previous time. And that's kind of at the heart of what your work is all about. So maybe tell us, what's your philosophy behind building these O2 treehouses or glamping treehouses, whatever you call them?
Yeah, nice. I mean, it's simple. It's just that, I think people in general need to, reconnect with nature and have, hopefully profound experiences in nature. Tree houses is a space that unlocks all those things in us for a variety of different reasons. I think, there's kind of like this primordial kind of like being up and high and out of the way of the creatures on the ground, from like a safety perspective that we probably don't even realize. That kind of gives us this like kind of gleeful, magical kind of feeling. And then, there's the lore of the treehouse, right? It's like in our cultures, of course, especially in the West, and Berenstain Bears and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's all there. You could go on. And, so yeah, it does unlock, like you said, those memories of a childhood when, it was just all about play and like, what can you get into? And it's just like, your brain was just like wired into the present moment. It wasn't wired into, like these long-term planning spaces that our minds end up in and become fixated on all the time, and of course it's required to live an adult life. Right. But, I think, getting away into the trees, into nature, especially into the treetop, yeah, it unlocks the magic of childhood and also being in like a quaint, small, kind of unique, special space has its, the architecture, just, there's so many more opportunities to kind of play with, the view of nature and that kind of thing, in a smaller space. You're just less like layered and layered up, and there's less ultimate kind of separation from nature and disconnect when you're in a tiny little spot and you got some big windows. It's like the divide is smaller between nature.
That's so true. And you're based out of Oakland, California. Is that where you grew up?
No, I grew up in Wisconsin, outside of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Yeah. Okay. And then, and when I went to school in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and when I got out of school, I had this idea to build this treehouse, a geodesic sphere treehouse, and created that. And when I created the business, people are like, "Oh, you're gonna move out to California, right?" Like, older wives are like, "Yeah, you're gonna end up in California." I'm like, "No. I'm gonna stay here in Minneapolis, like, center of operations in the country." I think like that summer I was like out in California building my first treehouse.
He said, "Now you know why it's so expensive out here."
Right.
You've cracked the code. Here's an unusual success story for you. Let me introduce you to Elizabeth Cochran Seaman, a.k.a. Nellie Bly, exposer of the horrors of a mental asylum in the late 1800s. I'm scared already. In 1885, Elizabeth read an article that argued that women should only have a domesticated role in the house, raising kids, cooking, and so forth. She wrote a sharp rebuke under the pseudonym Nellie Bly, earning her a spot as a columnist. Fun fact, she got her pen name from a song by Stephen Foster, who was basically the Justin Bieber of 1800s American folk music. Nellie became an investigative reporter, exposing unsafe working conditions, poor wages, and long hours at a local factory. Thank God all that's over with. Amazon. As an investigative reporter, she was given the terrifying assignment of looking into the Women's Lunatic Asylum on Blackwell's Island. You're welcome for the movie title, Hollywood. Her task was, quote, go undercover at the asylum with no guidance even on how to gain entry, never mind how to get out, unquote. Well, isn't that a whole big bag of nope? She pretended, as I often do, that she was from Cuba and was searching for missing, non-existent trunks. Getting in, as you can imagine, was the easy part. Over 10 days, she documented spoiled food, abuse, obscene neglect, filthy living conditions, and the general hellscape of an asylum that was well on its way to becoming eternally haunted, no doubt. She wrote a book on it called 10 Days in a Madhouse, which is just 700 fewer days than most of us have spent in a madhouse during this pandemic so far. Nellie built a career sticking up for what she believed in when nobody else believed in it around her. So learn her lesson well, I say, and expose.
Yeah, so I ended up moving, or just coming out to Los Angeles to build this structure. Actually, it was first San Diego, then made my way to Los Angeles and had, more projects there. Eventually, I'm like, oh, wow, yeah, I live in Los Angeles now. I should probably close up shop in Minnesota. Moved out in 2008 to Los Angeles.
Well, that's very cool. And at this point, are you full-time? Is this your full-time work? Do you have any kind of other work or side hustle?
No, yeah, this is my full-time gig for sure. Yeah, and has been for a long time.
How long?
I think probably 2008 when I moved out. It became full-time. I mean, it became a full-time focused pursuit when I moved out to Los Angeles. I didn't necessarily have like back-to-back pipeline of projects at that point. But for sure it was what I was doing. Like I wasn't really, I wasn't taking any other, jobs or employment anywhere else. I did work with a bamboo company out of Santa Barbara that was doing these large bamboo tensegrity shade structures for music festivals and other, sculptural creations out of bamboo. Which like really tailored, well with like a lot of like the rigging aspects that I was working in with the tree houses, and that really filled in the blanks for me. Very thankful for that work. And then, learned so much from the owner there, Gerard Benikawa. And, but after a while I'm like, why am I in Los Angeles here? It's like, I'm in the desert and like the world's largest trees are, 5 hours north.
Just north. So he ends up in Oakland. Now it all makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I landed here. It's like, all right, and that was always the thing. Like, I think my first sketches of a treehouse, like after I was in design school and like think about that. It was like this giant geodesic sphere in a redwood,
Whoa. So you went to school for design, so it's not completely out of the blue. You trained formally. Now, what did you cover in design school? Surely not this specifically.
No, definitely not this. But I went to school for furniture design at Minneapolis College of Art and Design, and they had a great furniture program there, and sculpture program. And what is it? It's like it's so much of like art education is understanding philosophically what it is that you're concerned about, where you fit in on all these different aspects of your art, of your creation, like what do you want to bring to the world. Just like the other part was just learning, the capacity of materials and all the other technical aspects, like, computer programs they're using, and, the tools, of course, so different ways in which to create things and understanding craft and all those beautiful things, the meditation of craft. So that's
cool.
kind of my background. Yeah. I always joke that I'm actually making, giant tree furniture,
Sure. And if I look at your website, you have lots of different sculptures, furniture. So you have and there's a sort of common thread to your work, I would say, as an ignorant observer. There is something that feels like your style that emerges from browsing through your website. And that thing that you have is this thing that I'm extremely aware that I do not have and have never had in my whole life. This artistic sense that you look at a space, you look at a thing, you think it should be like that, or you angle it. You clearly have an eye for this stuff. And I wish I had that eye because I just am endlessly in awe of people who do, but I know that I absolutely do not. I don't even know where to put a chair in a room in my house. I don't know what to do with any. And my wife's like, that's not right. And I'm like, okay, like I believe you, but I don't know what to do. So is that a gift?
How are you making your decision?
Exactly. Have you always had that ability? Did you, as a kid, were your drawings a little better than the kids around you, or is it something that you developed through training?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I guess, yeah. I don't know. I guess I maybe had a knack for it. I suppose, yeah. My grandma is an artist, and so my mom's side of the family, like they all like bitch and complain that there's like not an ounce of like creative blood in their body and all that, and like that's so untrue because they're all more musically oriented. And then my dad's side of the family is like they have more of a creative capacity, and my grandma's a painter. And so like at a very early age, like, we would go over there and do arts and crafts and all that kind of stuff. And my sister and I started like, drawing these Christonia statuettes that she would collect. And, my sister Heather started doing that. And I remember that was like a very early memory of, like, oh, it was like this thing, like art and drawing and stuff like that. And Heather was so amazing and talented at like just getting it. Oh, so perfect. Mine were like really like rough and, like in a different place altogether. And one thing that I remember was like, people have this like a gradation, various capacities to visualize things, which is really, like, sometimes it's really hard to understand like where somebody falls along that spectrum. And like, and I learned this with clients. Some you can show them a picture and they can take that and they can run with it and they can end up in the space in their mind's eye. And others really can't. Like you'll show them a model and be zooming around the model and they still won't really understand what it is or, and it doesn't come across. And so, yeah, I think, visual spatial awareness, like I always had a knack for that. I remember I was in this group called Odyssey of the Mind,
I remember we had that in my school too.
Did you?
I didn't do it, but I subbed for a friend one time. There was a competition. Okay. They said, well, guys out, will you jump in? And I jumped in, so I participated in one Odyssey of the Mind competition. And I think we had
cool.
to stack spaghetti with marshmallows, one of those typical challenges, or how high can you build a structure with spaghetti and I don't know what it was.
You
Something like
subbed
that.
in for one day. You got the spaghetti and marshmallow day. Man,
Yes,
that's lucky.
yes, I did.
Yeah, that's
And the teacher was
fantastic.
really funny because she took it incredibly seriously, and so she dabbed some vanilla on our foreheads because she somehow believed that was a good luck sign.
Wow. Okay.
Like vanilla extract. She said, "You need this; it will help your brain." That's okay.
That's for real.
Yeah.
You grew up in California though.
I didn't. I grew up in Colorado.
Oh, Colorado. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So 6 in one, half dozen in the other, I guess.
Yeah.
So Odyssey of the Mind. You're building structures. You're solving problems. You're competing at solving problems.
That's one. No, I was thinking that story because we brought up the subject, but we're like trying to create a boat. It's like a 2D boat out of cardboard, and we're like painting and attaching like tissue paper or something to the side of it. I was kind of like, oh, why don't we like cut off the corners so like it's round like a boat, and that was the teacher was thrilled by that, and the other kids were like, oh yeah, wow, like great, and it seemed like such an obvious thing to me. I don't know why I told that story, but
well, because I think in the greater sense is that things that seem obvious to you are not necessarily obvious to other people. And the fact that you found a career out of this, certainly not obvious. I can imagine
Sure.
That's a theme that's run through your life.
Yeah. Well, and this is getting weird because it's like there's so many other people, obviously, with visual like talent to like mechanically understand shapes and all of that. So, but yeah, it's fun. It's really fun. I love coming up with. It's the challenge of like, coming up with a form and then trying to figure out how to come up with engineering concepts, connections, et cetera, to make it work, but also, to make it to work and flow visually is, it's like the sweet spot. It's the heart. It's the flow space of design for me.
Super cool. Bloop, 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 bloop. Do you have somebody that you know who is an artist who wants to take their work to the next level? Do you know somebody who needs to take that next step in their highly unusual career? Well, you know what you should do right now? You should share this episode with them or share it on your social media feed. Share it anywhere. Help me grow this podcast so I can continue to bring these outstanding people and stories from all around the world. It's a collaborative effort. If you've been a passive consumer, please do something active, share, subscribe, leave a nice review on Apple Podcasts, subscribe on YouTube, subscribe anywhere, because it takes tremendous effort to put this show together each week and to find these people and to interview them and to put in all of the work afterwards. And if we can build a community, that will make it all worthwhile. So do your part to help this community grow. Subscribe, rate it 5 stars, do everything you can to help this podcast grow. I would greatly appreciate it. And now back to the show. So when you're back east, before you even ever thought about coming out here or doing anything like that, what point in your career did you feel that A, you could make a career out of this, and B, did you have any concept of what the business model actually would be, how you could make a living with your art?
No, not at all. I was, hopelessly uninformed, I would say, about, business. It's like in hindsight, I should have, read more, like, gone to a program or something like that, and like just gotten like the core basics. But, I think that a lot of artists and designers are ultimately put into that position where you need to, wear an entrepreneurial hat, whether you like it or not, could really, just do so much better for themselves. Like if they did get to, pull information. Now it's so much easier to go on YouTube and just like, binge. But it was none of that was a consideration. It was really just, it was a conversation with my dad, and that he had just moved in a new house, had some awesome trees, and we were reminiscing about the treehouse that he had built. And I thought, oh wow, we should build a treehouse, out here. And this poplar tree is an amazing poplar tree, really tall. And I just started sketching on it and came up with this like, geodesic sphere idea. And that design process was hilarious. I like to tell that because it was one of those things where it was just like, snap of your fingers, like you jump and you like arrive at the solution.
Whoa.
But it was a teepee. I wanting to create a platform, and that's just, support the edges of the platform around a single tree. And, the cables ultimately of this teepee shape are coming down and interrupting all the interior space. And I started like drawing, like, how do I triangulate the side of this structure so that the cables won't interrupt the space and push them out. And so I'm like triangulating off of a platform. I'm like, a geodesic sphere has already done that, And
as we all know, obviously.
Right. Yeah. Obviously. Yeah.
For everybody listening, of course.
Yeah.
You didn't know that? I'm shocked.
Yeah. So then I was hooked on it. I was like, oh my God, like a geodesic sphere treehouse, like perfect. It's like a little ornament, and engineering wise, you could hang from any one of the hubs. And so then I started rendering and sketching on it, and I pitched to a couple YMCA camps, and they're like, get out of here, kid. Like, no, we're not going to suspend all of our campers. Like, you're just off the turnip cart, My dad saw that I was like really into it, and gave me a budget of $3,000. And I think half of that went to pay my school loans and my rent or something. But I went back for that summer, and this was after I graduated, and, built it out of like aluminum conduit and, hopelessly undersized hardware. And those high density polyethylene canopy and floor and everything. It was like all very recyclable and unboltable. And so that was the first one. And like the blogs, I caught on to that, and I got some publicity, and it was just like, I was kind of hooked at that point. It was so much fun. I mean, it's like, I'm out there hanging in a tree, building this like cool piece of architecture, this object, and I'm like, oh wow, maybe people could actually, maybe there's a market for this. People would actually buy these. And so that was just like a super gradual like arc, like I said, end up in Los Angeles and still working, doing bamboo work, and just one job at a time. Like I just never took my eye off of that focus, like to continue with that line of work, I guess, for that.
Sure.
Yeah.
There are a lot of artistic people out there, or people who might think that they have a gift, but what is often not attached is the commercial part of it. So as a quick piece of advice for somebody who feels that they're, let's say, maybe they're good at arranging a space, or they're good at drawing, or they're good at any of these little artistic things, how do you recommend that they start taking that passion and formalizing it into more of a career path?
I think that folks in those positions ultimately need to, really search their soul and ask themselves, like, how much are you willing to give up of stability or lifestyle or whatever it is, which is ultimately connected to like the amount of risk you're willing to take. What's your amplitude to take on risk in your life? What's your borderline? Are you willing to live in your vehicle? Are you willing to like go homeless? Like where does it end in pursuit of the thing that you prize most, like your focus, the thing that you like feel in a gut, you have to be doing, like it brings you to a place of just feeling thrilled and excited, almost regardless of the monetary reward from it. And if you like, if you like, my professor always said, like, oh, fine, follow your bliss, So it's like, if you just, if something makes you happy, it can be light, right? It can be free and light. It doesn't need to be like heavy and hard. Like, oh, like I know, like this is my thing that I want to be doing. Because you never know, right? That's the fallacy. Like, you never know. You'll never know. There always be a bazillion options. You always be considering them. But if you're like happy enough, like doing the thing, it's like taking you from one curiosity and discovery point to the next. And that's fulfilling enough for you, because it's always going to be the static of our brains thinking and trying to solve and figure out what's my life for. Whoa, what should I really be doing? All that kind of stuff. So, find out what your risk capacity for risk is. And then, ultimately, like, I think, and I'm just like, standing on the shoulders of giants here, so many, greats have said it, but it's like, if you can, just stay with something for long enough and just keep doing it, that, eventually you'll just get better and better at like practicing an instrument. Eventually you'll be able to really make, this passionate music that people want in the world. And ultimately I think that, you'll receive that financial success. Right. And it's an investment in yourself. And it's a path where you're just constantly learning, constantly challenged, and there's always hurdles. And, but that's the work of life, right? That's the challenge and beauty of it. So yeah, hopefully that's
a great answer. It's a sage, raw, real answer to that question. So I know we've got to quickly jump up, but I want to ask one thing. So your whole life is pretty unconventional from the typical path of go to work, get a 9-to-5, work your way up the ladder in a corporate hierarchy. You're pretty far off of that path at this point, I would say, in your life.
Sure.
What is something unconventional that you believe that you think that a lot of people around you don't believe?
Unconventional that I believe a lot of people don't believe. I do truly believe that, this is, this is the whole, essentially the philosophy of like manifestation and all that. But I think that, that you like crystallizing something in your mind's eye to the absolute greatest detail that you're able to, just without getting like, how the universe works and philosophy and all of that. Like, it literally just like creates a list of things like recently conceived in your mind, and you start seeing those things. You just start seeing those things. There's just so much information we need to bring in on a daily basis. And it's unbelievable amount of detail and fissures and pathways you can go down into conversations and, things that you're pulling out and intuiting from the world. And if you're making that little list of those things that you want and like making the vision crystal, I guess is the best way I can put it. You just start seeing those things in the world. They'll pop out at you. And if you want to call that manifestation or the universe working in your favor, or, acting and giving you based upon your commitment to it, it's a real thing. And I think that, so many people that do believe that, so it's not like it's a new idea, but there's a lot of people that don't understand that. And these are all the same techniques of like athletes, right? Like, vision yourself winning every step of the way. And it's so great. It's so amazing. It's so powerful. And it's so much fun to be, because you're dreaming. And in that act, you're saying to yourself that it is possible. And you're living that in your head, and then when it happens for you, you're constantly surprised over and over how much it will deliver for you in that way. And it's thrilling,
Fabulous. Well, your vision is pretty spectacular. That's a great answer. The stuff that you have envisioned and brought to life is truly otherworldly and outstanding. We'll put it all up over this video. I can't thank you enough for sharing your time. Again, your story is one of those ones that I saw I just thought, this is the coolest shit ever. I looked at your website. This is amazing. And
Oh,
I know I'm not the
nice.
only one who thinks that. You've gotten a lot of people who feel the same way, and I know you will continue to keep on rocking. I hope that the second piece, that we get the last 10% of the 90s to 100 or 99 at least. I feel like
Yeah.
it will. Just keep at it. You've got
Totally.
one more fan in your corner. I know you got to get out of here, and I want to be respectful of your time, but just thanks a whole bunch for being here and sharing your thoughts.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much, Ross. Yeah, this is a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. And I think,
Me too.
just like, more power to what you're doing too in this podcast. It's like absolutely wonderful message to be putting out there, and stories are so critical to, paving the way for people. So yeah.
Thank you. I couldn't do it without people like you saying yes to sit down with a idiot like me. So I'm just humble to learn. But thank you.
Likewise, man. Likewise.
Yeah. Let's stay in touch. And with that, the official podcast is over.